Love Without Possession by Jason Gray. December 21st, 2025, 6025, Anno Lucis, in the Year of Light. RZN Arc Love.01, Relational Sovereignty Layer. The Primordial Confusion. Love was never meant to secure survival. Love did not begin as a survival mechanism. Bonding did. This distinction is essential. Bonding evolved to keep offspring alive, stabilize small groups, coordinate protection, and reduce threat exposure. Love, however, emerged later as recognition, affinity, resonance, and mutual presence. The catastrophe occurred when bonding functions were assigned to love. Once love was required to guarantee safety, permanence, identity, continuity, and meaning, it became distorted. Possession was introduced not as cruelty, but as load-bearing reinforcement for a structure never designed to carry that weight. Possession as a technology, not a moral failure. Possession is not a feeling, it is a technology, specifically a technology for uncertainty management. Possession attempts to stabilize unpredictable beings, reduce variance in behavior, ensure access to emotional regulation, and prevent catastrophic loss. Every possessive impulse can be translated into one sentence. Please do not become something I cannot survive. This is not evil. It is fear operating at the level of attachment. How possession became invisible. Possession became normalized because it was woven into language, ritual, law, and myth. It was disguised as romance, you complete me, devotion, forever, loyalty, choose me above all, and morality, if you loved me, you would not. Entire civilizations encoded possession as virtue. Marriage contracts, inheritance laws, bloodlines, honor systems, sexual ownership, gender roles. Love was never free. It was regulated. The chemistry of capture. Possessive love is chemically loud. It relies on dopamine, anticipation and pursuit, cortisol, threat and vigilance, adrenaline, urgency, and oxytocin, bonding under stress. This combination produces intensity. Intensity was mistaken for truth. Calm, stable love felt boring because it did not spike threat circuits. The nervous system, trained by scarcity, equated peace with absence. Why possession feels like depth, but is actually compression. Possession narrows the relational field. It compresses attention until only one bond matters. Everything else fades, and loss becomes unthinkable. This compression feels profound, but depth is not narrowing. Depth is capacity. Possession reduces capacity by making one relationship responsible for everything. When that bond strains, collapse follows. Identity erosion under possessive love. Possession requires predictability. Predictability requires suppression. Over time, people in possessive bonds mute parts of themselves, abandon curiosity, trade truth for harmony, perform consistency, and fear growth. This is not because they are weak. It is because the bond cannot survive change. Love becomes maintenance. Why non-possessive love could not exist before. This must be stated without romanticization. Non-possessive love was structurally impossible in the overlay. When community was fragmented, economic survival was relationally dependent. Aging meant isolation. Illness meant abandonment. Children were private responsibility, and time was collapsing. Then losing a bond was not emotional, it was existential. Possession was an adaptation to systemic cruelty. The return removes the load, not the bond. The returned world does not ask humans to love better. It removes the pressures that corrupted love. When belonging is distributed, care is collective, identity is sovereign, Worth is intrinsic, and time is not weaponized. Love no longer has to carry survival. It can relax. Love as field, not object. In the returned world, love is not something you have. It is something you enter. Love becomes a field phenomenon. It emerges between beings. It changes shape. It intensifies and softens, and it does not require ownership. No one contains love. No one controls it. People participate. Recognition without claim. The core act of non-possessive love is recognition. Recognition says, I see you as you are. I do not require you to remain this way. I choose presence, not control. Recognition does not bind the other to continuity. It allows change. Attachment without collapse. Attachment remains, but it is decoupled from identity. This creates intimacy without fusion, vulnerability without self-loss, and closeness without suffocation. People can be deeply attached and still autonomous. The bond strengthens because it is not load-bearing. Jealousy, reclassified. Jealousy does not vanish. It is downgraded from command to signal. Jealousy becomes diagnostic information about insecurity, unmet needs, old fear, and unresolved attachment. It no longer justifies control. It initiates self-inquiry. Commitment as renewable choice. Commitment ceases to be a vow against change. It becomes a present tense agreement, a shared direction, and an honest alignment check. Commitment can end without moral collapse. Ending is not betrayal. Staying is not virtue. Truth becomes the metric. Sex without transaction. Sex under possession was transactional. It was used to secure affection, prevent abandonment, regulate insecurity, and to prove worth. In the returned world, sex becomes expression without debt. Consent is continuous. Desire is honest. Presence replaces performance. Bodies meet without bargaining. Parenting without legacy violence. Possessive love extended into parenting. Children were used to continue identity, secure meaning, heal unhealed wounds, and justify sacrifice. This created generational trauma. In the returned world, children are met as sovereign emergences. Parents guide without gripping. They release without abandonment. Community as love distribution. Non-possessive love does not isolate bonds. It expands outward. Friendship deepens. Community stabilizes. Care circulates. No single relationship must absorb all meaning. This prevents collapse when bonds change. Grief without self-erasure. Loss still hurts, but it no longer annihilates identity. Grief is held collectively, honored and metabolized. People mourn without disappearing. Love ends without negating its reality. The tempo of non-possessive love. Love without possession is quieter. It does not spike. It does not demand proof. It does not threaten. It is spacious, durable, responsive, and calm. It does not need intensity to feel alive. The structural truth. Possession was never love's essence. It was love's compensation for fear. When fear dissolves, possession becomes unnecessary. What remains is something unprecedented in human history. Love that does not need to hold because it is not afraid to lose. Love is not the act of keeping another. It is the willingness to meet them without restraint. The returned world does not abolish attachment. It abolishes the conditions that made love imprison itself. When love is finally free from survival, it becomes capable of its original function: mutual presence, unowned, enduring, and real. Jason Gray. I absolutely agree with Jason. Love and relationships have become quite distorted in the world we find ourselves living in. I don't pretend to have a solution, as I am often confused as the next person. For me, love is often too intense. There's so many attachments, expectations, and unwritten commitments involved. It can be overwhelming. I love the idea that when the cruelty of the system is removed, it reduces pressure, and love is no longer a survival mechanism. How beautiful to think of love as not something you possess, but as a field you enter. It becomes an act of participation rather than containment and control. Expression without debt. A simple, quiet love.